You've likely heard of oxytocin, the so-called cuddle hormone. But focusing on the hormone itself is like trying to understand a message by studying the ink it's written with. The real story, the meaning, is found not in the key, but in the lock it fits into. We're talking about the oxytocin receptor, a protein molecule encoded by a gene called OXTR. Where these receptors are located in your brain and how many of them you have dictates the entire narrative of your social world. This becomes incredibly clear when you look at voles. The prairie vole forms lifelong pair bonds. Its cousin, the montane vole, is solitary and promiscuous. They both produce oxytocin. The crucial difference is that the prairie vole's brain is studded with oxytocin receptors in its reward circuitry, specifically the nucleus accumbens. For them, social bonding literally feels as rewarding as food or water. The montane vole simply lacks the right locks in the right places. Humans, of course, are not voles, but we do carry the same genetic instruction manual. Variations in our OXTR gene, tiny single-letter changes in our DNA, correlate with profound differences in social behavior. One well-studied variant, RS53576, has been linked to variations in empathy and optimism. People with the G allele tend to score higher on these traits than those with the A allele. This isn't destiny. It is a slight, persistent nudge on your personality written in your genetic code. Here is where the simple cuddle hormone narrative completely falls apart. Administering oxytocin doesn't create universal love. It acts as an amplifier for social salience. It strengthens the bond to your in-group, your family, your team, your tribe. Simultaneously, it can increase defensiveness, suspicion, and even aggression towards those perceived as outsiders. It's a bonding agent, but only for the bricks of your own fortress. The famous trust game studies seem to support the love drug idea. Participants given an oxytocin nasal spray were more likely to entrust their money to a stranger. But follow-up studies revealed a critical layer of complexity. Oxytocin doesn't blindly generate trust. It enhances your attention to social cues. If the cues are positive, you become more trusting. If the cues are ambiguous or threatening, it can actually make you more suspicious. It's not a trust potion, it's a social magnifying glass. How can one chemical be responsible for both bonding and suspicion? The answer lies deep in the brain's fear center, the amygdala. This region is dense with oxytocin receptors. When oxytocin binds to them, it can act as a brake, dampening the fear response. This is what makes approaching a new person or joining a group feel less threatening. It doesn't create the desire to connect, but it lowers the anxiety barrier that might otherwise stop you. Think about hunger. Your body has a system to detect a caloric deficit and motivate you to eat. There's a growing idea that we have a similar system for social connection called social homeostasis. When you feel isolated, your brain may interpret this as a social deficit. The oxytocin system is a key regulator here. The discomfort of loneliness could be a signal, a neurochemical craving, pushing you to restore your social equilibrium. Your genetic blueprint for oxytocin receptors isn't the final word. Early life experiences can physically alter how your genes are read, a process called epigenetics. Specifically, a process called methylation can add chemical tags to the OXTR gene, effectively silencing it. Severe stress or neglect in childhood can lead to increased methylation, reducing the number of available oxytocin receptors. This suggests that our capacity for bonding is shaped not just by our DNA, but by the imprint of our earliest relationships. So, are we just biochemical puppets dancing on the strings of our receptor density? Probably not. A better way to think about it is as a statistical influence. Having a particular gene variant or epigenetic profile doesn't force you to be a certain way. It just slightly changes the probability that you will respond to a social situation with empathy, trust, or anxiety. It's a bias, a thumb on the scale of your incredibly complex mind, not a command. This all leads to a final, crucial point. Measuring oxytocin in your blood or saliva tells you very little about what's actually happening in your brain. Oxytocin acts locally, within specific circuits. Its release in the bloodstream is often completely disconnected from its release within the brain. This means many grand claims about boosting your oxytocin are based on a flawed premise. The important action isn't systemic, it's hyperlocal, a quiet conversation between neighboring neurons. Monotony has grown fast. Nearly 2,700 people have watched in the last few weeks, yet less than 0.03% are subscribed. It would mean a lot if you joined by hitting subscribe. And again, thanks for watching.